Hi everyone and welcome back to another video. So I haven't planned, or I didn't plan any content for Black History Month, and we're like nearly halfway into October, so nearly halfway into Black History Month. And I just knew at the end of September, when I actually realised like next month was October and that it would be Black History Month, I was like, damn, I ain't gonna have any time to do that. But what I do have time to do is talk about a book that I want to recommend, so you can pick it up in the second half of the month, I suppose, and also two books that I am reading this month for Black History Month, or say for Black History Month. It just so happened to coincide very nicely. And then I will also signpost you to a couple of videos I did last year, so if you're looking for any sort of inspiration about authors that you can read, I do have some content from the previous year in which you can go and look at. So what I'm going to do first is talk about this book. So I actually read this at the end of September, so mid-September to the end of September. And this is Brown Girl in the Ring by Olukemi Ogunyemi. I am so sorry if I'm butchering the surname. And the subtitle is Memoirs of a Brown Girl Living in Scotland. So the author actually reached out to me last year, around maybe this time last year, or later towards the second half, towards the very later half of the year, about her book. And it's taken me so long to get around to reading it. That is why if you've ever emailed me like in this past year for a book review, I have just been like, no, because I just don't have capacity anymore. But finally read this, and I'm so glad I did, because obviously this is about tackling, well, it's not about tackling racism in Scotland, this is about Kemi's experience of racism growing up in Scotland. I believe she was originally born in London, at least in England somewhere, but then I think from the age of like 4 onwards, the whole story is like set in Scotland. And honestly, I was reading this and I was just horrified. Like, there were just so many people in this book that I just absolutely hated. This is obviously Kemi's memoir, so these are people in her life, and I just cannot believe the lack of safeguarding from like just parents. Like I'm just so flummoxed, and I know these things happen, but just reading it, it just breaks my heart. And it's just like, this is horrible. So not only like just like racism, there is just like manipulation, abuse, sexual assault, like all wrapped up in this book. I want to try and be succinct about the book, but also like not spoil anything. But this essentially is Kemi talking about her experiences when they moved to a small town. So I think they moved to like several small towns, and I like haven't memorized them all just because it's a small town. But I think a lot of this takes place just like sort of outside of Glasgow. And you know, like Kemi being an 8-year-old kid, and like adults, grown ass adults, like spitting on her, you know, going into shops where people would throw money at her instead of giving money back. And I'm just like, you're an adult. But you know what, now like being an adult, and I, you know, just the way people behave, I'm like, do you know what, I know people are dumb, but it just bothers me, like an 8-year-old child. And you know, there is a lot now, and I'm trying to remember what the word is, of the way that, you know, the police and society essentially sees young black kids. They don't see them as children instantly. They hit a certain age and you just view them as adults, and it's just like, how can you do that to an 8-year-old kid? Like, how can you treat them like that? So there's all sorts of just like things in here about the way that she's treated from other people, but also the way she's treated from her mum. So her mum is white, Scottish, and her dad is Nigerian. And I guess this isn't really a spoiler, but she doesn't grow up with her dad for a long amount of time, because her dad is actually in prison, and then he comes back into their life when they're in Scotland. And I think her mum battles a lot with the fact that she has mixed race kids. I think she does. Battles with the fact that she has mixed race kids and doesn't really know how to like protect Kemi. But also she has internalized racism, so it's just like, like what's going on? And there's loads of stuff about like the family after like the dad gets out of prison, and sort of the things that they do as well. What I want to say is this book is really chaotic. Not chaotic in the sense that like it's all over the place, but there's just so much happening that I just don't know how Kemi found the strength to like do it all. It's so much is in here, like so much of her life, and it's just like at times I was just like, this is so intense and so emotional. So it chronicles her life. She's says very like lovingly in here speaks about her grandparents, and that's her grandparents on her mum's side, and just how much love they gave her. Her grandparents seem to be the only one that seem to realise that, you know, she was different, but not in the sense that like it was bad, that it was the outside world that wouldn't accept her because they're dumb. So they really tried to like instill that love in her, but obviously she still had her mum who was just like being horrible. And then there's a lot in here about the mother sort of daughter relationship and just how controlling her mum is, but that in terms of like comments about her body and comments about her waist, her eating and things like that, that has effects on Kemi as she grows older. And then I think, I'm not sure how old Kemi is, so I don't know if it's a teenage pregnancy, but I think it was, maybe she's like 18, 19, she gets pregnant, and The story talks about that, talks about domestic violence, the partner that she chose, and then like she goes on to have other children, and it's about like those partners as well, and just the sort of racism that those partners have against her. It's always so interesting for me as well to read about this hatred, like the way these men would pursue her and love her and stuff like that, but then when they get into an argument, it's the race comment is thrown, and you're just like, are you alright in your head? Like, if you really don't like someone because of their race, why are you with them? It does have some really positive points in here, you know, her children being born and how she overcomes certain sort of illnesses in her life, how she trains in school to, I think she does some sort of like massage therapy when her opening her business, her finding like the love of her life, some sort of transitions in her children's lives, so it's not like just complete sadness, but a lot of it is to do with the fact that not only does she face racism from like individual people, her family, the partners and stuff like that, then there goes on to be a case that involves social work and like her children, and it's that racism from the institution, from individuals in the institution, but overall the institution as well. So honestly, like, this book is just packed with pages that you're just like, I cannot believe this. Like, there were so many aspects I was just like, who the fuck are these people? Like, seriously, these people exist out there. So yeah, this was an absolute whirlwind, and it was taking place like in and around like Glasgow, like I said originally, but then it does take place in like sort of the northern part of Scotland as well. But yeah, this was a very insightful book. So I think this takes place like in like the 1970s, so it's a very interesting account of what like racism was like in Scotland in and around that time. I know this is only one person's account, but it can't be the only account of fucking shit like this. It's absolutely wild, absolutely insane. Like, this is just a roller coaster. I would 100% recommend picking this up, especially if like, particularly for Black History Month, if you don't read a lot of things based around Scotland. I know a lot of it is about people living in London or like other parts of England and things like that, but I think if you're looking for something a bit different and you're interested in a memoir, I would definitely highly recommend this. So I'm going to talk about two books, one that I'm actually reading, one that I want to read, and I actually saw both of these books on NetGalley, and they're published by One World, and it was just like, I think, one of their e-blasts about books. Well, duh, what else would it be about? That's what NetGalley sends out. But both of these caught my eye, and I just really like them because one is from, I believe, a Ghanaian author, and the other is from a Nigerian author, and they're both on very two different topics, and I actually wanted to request them both, but I was like, I'm gonna be greedy, I'm just gonna request one, because it just takes me forever to get around to writing reviews, so it's just like, I don't want that pressure, like, I can just buy the other one. So the one that I did not request is One for Sorrow, Two for Joy by Marie-Claire Amua. I don't actually know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I don't know. So this author is a barrister, and she was born and raised in South London, and I don't know about like her heritage or anything like that, but the book, I want to read it out to you because it sounds so good, and I'm like, I need to read it. I want more stories about like Guardians in London, because that's like I say fascinating, that's just like interesting to me, especially if it's going to be fiction. So the blurb: it's hard to plan your future when the ghosts of the past won't leave you alone. Stella tries very hard to be good. I feel like Stella is the kind of name that loads of like writers in the UK, when writing about people, I guess, from their parents' country, their country, give. I don't know why, I feel like in some sort of Jamaican stories that I've seen as well, that's quite a commonly used name. But anyway, Stella tries very hard to be good. She tries not to be sassy, to answer back, to be noticed. Because when Stella's father is angry, it's like lightning and thunder and hailstones, and all she can do is touch wood or search for magpies. Two for Joy. But as Stella begins to build a new life, her past still haunts her. It will take all her grace, courage and love to heal her wounds and break free. Set against a backdrop of London and Ghana, Marie-Claire Amua has produced an unforgettable exploration of intergenerational trauma. Brimming with compassion, One for Sorrow, Two for Joy offers both a sensitive portrayal of the ripple effects of domestic violence and a defiant story of friendship, resilience and hope. This just sounds so good to me, especially as someone who grew up in a household where someone was angry all the time. So I think that's probably one of the like factors that stood out to me. But I just want to find out more about this person, and I don't know, I just loved the sound of it when I read it. I was like, how nice. And then to see it like sit alongside another book that I'm going to speak about, I was like, right, I need to read this book. So right after I finish the book that I'm talking about now, I'm going to be reading that. So the book I'm currently reading is Someday Maybe by Onyi Nwabineli. I'm in 36% on my Kindle, and again, this is published by One World, and this is by a Nigerian British author, and it's a story about grief. So I'll also read you the blurb and then let you know like how I'm finding it so far. So it says, someday maybe it's a story of grief and resilience that you won't be able to stop talking about. And then it says here are 3 things that you should know about my husband. 1, he was a great love of my life despite his penchant for going incommunicado. 2, he, as far as I and everyone else could tell, perfectly happy. 3, on New Year's Eve, he killed himself. And here is 1 thing you should know about me. I found him. Bonus fact, no, I am not okay. Eve is left brokenhearted by her husband's unexpected death, but everyone around her, her friends, her boisterous British Nigerian family, her toxic mother-in-law seems to be pushing her to move on. Unable to face the future, Eve begins looking back, delving through the history of her marriage in an attempt to understand what went wrong. Sorry, it says where it went wrong. So it begins, an unconventional love story about loss, resilience, and a heroine bursting with rage and unexpected joy. So reading this so far, the bit I've gotten to really is a month has passed and she decides to return back to work, and she's still experiencing that grief, and it's been a very nice, well-paced book in the sense like you haven't felt like anything has been rushed. I was a bit unsure sometimes of the sense of timing, but when I found out like a month has passed, I was like, yeah, that sounds about right to me, because it's not like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, like the chapters aren't split like that or anything like that. But it's so nice. Like, I think sometimes when I have read stories about like Nigerian families that have come along, it's always been in the sense that the parents have come over and are perhaps working like lower paid jobs to obviously give their kids a better life, whereas in this one actually her parents are doctors, like both of them are doctors, and they're like very like doing well respected jobs, I suppose, like, and things like that. So I thought, oh, that's quite a change. And then like her sister's a lawyer. I can't remember what she does. She's actually like a writer at a magazine or something. Yeah, she does content, and then I can't remember her brother does. But yeah, so far it's been a really interesting exploration of grief. I have to say I don't read a lot of books that touch on the subject of grief, and I myself have never like personally experienced grief. I've never experienced someone close to me dying. I like know how fortunate I am in that sense. So it is very interesting to see how she's processing all of these things, and in most cases she's not. Like, she's doing what I would expect someone grieving to do. I cannot believe people who have lost someone are expected to like go back to work after a month. That's insane. Like, I'm just like, how? Like, I get people want a sense of normality, but what's the normal in that? I think someone you love has just passed away. Like, I cannot fathom that you wouldn't think even in a year's time that you would be okay, but that's me. So yeah, it's about her dealing with that grief, but also us looking back on their story. So, you know, how they got together, how they got to the point that they were at, especially because you heard me read the back and you talk about the fact that no one knew like he was unhappy and things like that. So I guess it's really about her like really delving in, and she hasn't got to at that point, about perhaps where the cracks showed. It's a very interesting one. She's Nigerian, she's black Nigerian, and Quentin is white, English white, I suppose. His mum, well, his dad passed away, but his mum is like, well, his dad is like some sort of very rich person and owns a lot of property or stuff in some sort of English village or whatever. So by default makes the mum very rich, and then from a higher class and all those sorts of things. So, you know, it's that kind of, the mum just, I don't know if she hates her because she's poor or she hates her because she's black. It's probably the latter, and probably both, but we know which one comes first. So yeah, there's that kind of animosity there. And then obviously when she loses her son, she then blames the daughter because, well, she blames Eve because, one, you took my son away from me and didn't even want him to marry you, and now my son is dead. So there's a lot of that in there as well. So it's a very interesting one that I'm enjoying. And finally, one book that I want to finish, and it's a huge anthology, is Noodles of Africa. I feel like come December, or come January actually, I would have been reading this for 2 years, and truth be told, I just do not pick this up. Like, it's by my bedside table and I always forget. So I'm going to try and read a couple of the stories or poems or essays from here, as a way to obviously make my way through it, but as a nod to Black History Month. This obviously doesn't just contain content from Black British writers, it's an anthology of women of African descent. But I'm sure, just by any sort of reading, I will be able to make sure that I hit that sort of Black British demographic, or Black British writer, so it'll be fine. The way I say Black British is so British, Black British. But yeah, that is it for this video. In terms of videos that I have made last year, I will post 2 here, but I will link all 3 in the description box down below, because I did do one that was like a giveaway last year. I also did a reading vlog, and I think there's another one that just off the top of my head now I cannot remember. But yeah, if you're looking for sort of content or any sort of recommendations for authors that you can read, definitely check those videos out. I wish I had like more time this October, but I don't. So that is the reality of that. But thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in another one. Bye.